Good morning, everybody. After a long start and I'm sure a short queue, all excited to be here. My name's Gareth. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Ravi. We're a part of a group of 6 of co-founders of DComm, Layer 1 blockchain protocol focused on real-world asset tokenization. We're made up of 3 core pillars. The first being our communities. That's what DComm stands for, decentralized communities. I'll stop saying that, I guess. Real-world asset tokenization. We've got a DComm infrastructure side of our business where we own solar farms, 3 solar farms that we're building. So the basic premise is to outline what can be achieved with real-world asset tokenization on our own assets. And then our third is our blockchain, which Dr. Ravi is our expert in. So Dr. Ravi, in terms of the blockchain, could you give us a little bit of insight into what it's made up of?
Yeah, so DComm is a EVM-compatible blockchain. It's a layer 1 protocol. And it has got all the core components of a blockchain with a high throughput. So we have having 5,000 transactions per second kind of TPS. And in addition to that, there's a delegated proof of stake. So it's more inclusive staking consensus, which is enabled. And you can even use your mobile app or normal computer to stake on the chain. And then there's a concept of subnets, which allows infinite scalability to the blockchain. Yeah. Plus, it's a smart contract enabled. There are various virtual machines. EVM is the first one that's there. Plus, the whole VM is composable. So more and more VMs are going to be added further down the line.
Perfect. When we set out to achieve this goal, obviously you start at a point where you've got to identify the challenges. And one of the core challenges of asset tokenization is the complexity of the transaction that will take place when there's several different parts of the transaction and hundreds of perhaps thousands of people subject to it. And so in terms of those challenges, Dr. Ravi, could you walk us through what are the 2 core challenges that you've identified?
Yes, so today, as we have seen, DeFi has picked up very well. Today in 2022, we are talking about more than 120 billion worth of TVL logged in DeFi platforms. But the challenge in DeFi today is that it's largely based on crypto collateralization. And on the other hand, tokenization has started picking up, starting from digital collectibles in the form of NFTs to real-world asset tokenization. So what we are trying to do here is that these 2 challenges where DeFi on the one hand is solely based or limited on crypto collateralization to tokenization of assets and combine them together so that real-world asset tokenized assets can be put on DeFi and there can be more collaterals options there. So today, starting from 120 billion, which is today the market size of DeFi is, to take that $2 trillion worth of assets. So that is the major challenges that we see and try to solve here.
And in terms of the blockchain itself to support, let's say 5 years from now, I guess when blockchain started, you had the option of one, it was revolutionary innovation in Bitcoin and what it was all about in the decentralization and transparency of transactions, and then moved into 2nd generation blockchains where NFTs became prevalent, smart contracts. And at that stage in time, I guess, older adage, you can have something fast, you can have something cheap, and you get something scalable, but you can only pick 2 of them. And with 3rd generation blockchains, that's no longer applicable. So we believe that we can achieve all 5 of, low cost, energy efficiency, high scalability through our blockchain. And I actually got the message at 1 o'clock this morning. Our testnet did launch on today, so we're relatively proud of that effort. Made today's deadline. So, Dr. Ravi, in terms of, let's say, tokenization and structures, and I know it's a broad audience, but what is real-world asset tokenization?
So, if you compare with digital collectibles, it's easy to tokenize the digital assets like collectibles. When we talk about real-world assets, then we need to take care of compliances, regulations. We need to take care of proof of assets. How to secure the underlying asset, and then there needs to be a full cycle, asset lifecycle management of tokenizing the asset, then secondary market for trading the assets, and then redemption of the assets so that the tokens can be burned. So the idea is to ensure that every time, whatever tokens are in circulation, they are mapped or synced up with the underlying assets. So real-world asset tokenization is when we are bringing the real-world assets, tokenizing them using blockchain, and then enabling the whole infrastructure of blockchain for trading, redemption, etc. for asset lifecycle management.
Now, on that particular point, there's some examples of assets that could be tokenized. And in the event of gold, the one there on the left-hand side, could you give us an idea of how you would perhaps go about tokenizing that asset?
Yes, I think gold, consider gold as to be one of the simplest assets to be tokenized. So there are quite a few startups who have done gold tokenization. Now, the way the process works is, one, there needs to be a proper supply chain. So how the gold is coming into the vault. So we call that concept as proof of asset. So you have got the asset, you have procured the asset, and that asset is secured, let's say in a vault, a third-party vault. And then there needs to be sufficient decentralization in terms of having other third parties corroborate that, yes, there is this much of gold lying in the vault. So it can be assurance companies like PwC giving assurance on chain that, yes, this kind of gold is there. So that is first part is the procurement of gold and having a complete supply chain traceability behind the procurement on chain. Once that is there, then based on these multiple signatures on chain, this should be coupled directly with the minting contract so that tokens can only be minted once there is underlying gold into the vault. And once the tokens are there, the tokens can be freely traded in the primary market and the secondary markets. And anytime a person who is holding the gold tokens should be able to come to the vault and redeem physical gold. And as soon as the physical gold is redeemed, it should not be dependent on the platform itself. So that's what we call a completely decentralized supply chain of gold, where you are not reliant on the platform which is providing you the tokenization. They are just providing you the technology to enable this, but you are not dependent. So let's say even if the platform is not there, still you are holding tokens, the tokens should not be a waste. You should be able to go to a vault, give the tokens back, get your physical gold, and the tokens will be burned. So that is what the standard or well optimized or compliant process should look like.
Exactly. We've got to a point where we launched our testnet today, and we're on a journey which effectively starts today. But in order for us to get here, we've had to achieve the ability to produce a platform. And what we want to do is give that platform out to the communities and enable them to tokenize assets. And so there's two core components to doing that. It's the blockchain, it's the technology layer, and the core services layer. Could you walk us through those two, please?
Yep, so the blockchain layer is pretty simple. It's straightforward. We have launched a layer 1 protocol that enables high throughput, high transaction finality, a concept of subnet so that you can have infinite scalability down the line. And then, some of the core pieces on the blockchain like, wallets, explorers, and non-custodial wallets. And then on the services layer, so that is the most interesting part, where we are building a core services layer that will enable real-world asset tokenization. Now, what this layer consists of, it consists of decentralized oracles so that you can put in the price feeds or asset data feeds from externally into the blockchain. And then there is zero-knowledge proofs to bring in privacy of transactions. Because as we have seen, if we want blockchain to be widely spread across institutions or enterprises, we need to have a clear privacy layer so that the underlying user data or the asset data is secured and privacy is preserved. And then, we need to have interoperability. So today, with this blockchain, we are providing interoperability with all the Ethereum-based assets, ERC20 assets. And later on, as I mentioned, the VM is going to be composable so that more and more blockchains are going to be supported, whether substrate-based ecosystem or Cosmos-based ecosystem. So these are some of the core services layer that we are building. The whole idea is that we provide the technology platform and let others partners come in, and they can start, tokenizing real-world assets. It can be real estate, it can be carbon credits, it can be bonds, it can be gold and other commodities. Every kind of different assets can be tokenized on the platform.
So talk us through a little bit about the identity and not custodial wallet and why that's important in this particular aspect.
Yes, so non-custodial wallets, as we have seen, there are custodial wallets where somebody else is storing or keeping your private key. Now, from a user experience, custodial wallets are pretty good. But when you want to have a clear ownership of the asset, then you require non-custodial wallets. And non-custodial wallet means that you yourself is owning the private key, nobody else. You only has the access to own the asset, transfer the asset, redeem the physical underlying asset. So you have a total control over the wallet.
And how would that interact with zero-knowledge proof? If you can give us some examples of what that entails.
Yeah, so the concept of zero-knowledge proof is that you have a piece of data, and if you want to verify, if you want to prove to the verifier that you have the data without giving away the data. So the whole concept of zero-knowledge proof is that you are able to prove that you have the data without divulging the data details. And this is very important from one, on scalability side of the blockchains, and secondly on privacy side. So if we talk about DeFi, like the challenges like front running, etc., can be solved using zero-knowledge proofs. And then when we talk about real-world asset tokenization, institutions the participation from institutions or enterprises will only come in where there's a clear privacy guidelines or clear privacy preserving methods within the blockchain, so that the underlying asset data or the user information, etc., can be preserved. So that is what the concept of zero knowledge proof in the case of blockchain.
And talking us through a little bit on compliances, and you mentioned it early on in challenges, but in terms of a solution, what sorts of things can we expect?
Yeah, so for real-world asset tokenization, I think the compliances combine the traditional compliances and the regulations of the state, combining that with the cryptographic methods within the blockchain, and combine the two. I take an example of decentralized identity. So today we have cryptographic identity, you have MetaMask, you go to a DeFi platform, you connect your MetaMask and start doing the transactions. On the other hand, when you talk about transacting in real-world asset tokenized assets, in that case you do require your KYC. Some of the assets, there will be compliances where KYC would be required. Now, how to combine these two? So the whole decentralized identity for real-world asset tokenization, we are combining the cryptographic identity of blockchain and your real-world identity, so that you can, once this combined, so you can operate on DeFi platforms, trade in real-world asset tokenized assets, and using your same identity. So you have the benefit of DeFi, at the same time you are using your real-world identity to trade in the assets, following all the compliances and regulations of the state.
Yeah, and outside of asset tokenization, real-world identity used in that way can have a lot of applications.
Which one?
It can have a lot of applications outside of real-world asset tokenization, a decentralized identity.
Yeah, absolutely. So decentralized identity, I think it has already started picking up the whole concept of self-sovereign identity. One, of course, is the inclusiveness, because there are quite a few people who are still outside the financial ecosystem. Having a decentralized identity is bringing a lot of inclusiveness, bringing all these people within the financial ecosystem. But in addition to that, as I mentioned, if you want to take blockchain to the real world, and if you talk about real world assets or enterprise transactions, it may be a financial ecosystem. So there we do require combining of KYC or the AML checks within the cryptographic identity. So decentralized identity, I think, will be everywhere. Yeah. So rather than using a plain cryptographic identity for DeFi transactions or a plain KYC transactions, where a lot of privacy issues are there or security issues are there, the combination actually makes sense. So for example, let's say you are going to a bar, you want to prove that you are above 18 years of age. Today what you do is you share your national identity. Now you are proving just your date of birth, but at the same time you need to provide your name, your address. There are a lot of other details that you are divulging. And what essentially I need to prove is that I'm above 18 years of age, right? So that is what zero knowledge proof comes in. That is what decentralized identity will do. That you can prove that you are above a certain age without divulging any other details of your identity.
Yeah, and that would happen all through your wallet and protected through your phrase and the mnemonic sequence. So looking at our diagram there, we've got two sides to our story, which is our own real-world assets, which is renewable energy and sustainable blockchain mining. And we're providing the services for people to tokenize their own assets. Could you talk us through, from a developer's perspective, what they can expect from those services?
Yeah, so one, a very strong documentation, a very strong team which is going to support technically anybody who wants to build on top of DComm. So we are providing a whole ecosystem. Plus, our community has already started picking up. We did a testnet, public testnet launch today, and the mainnet launch is going to come in next 6 to 8 weeks. Till the time we already have, the best part is we already have startups who are building on DComm even before the public testnet was in place. So getting a lot of good traction. There are a lot of organizations who want to do real world asset tokenization. So we are enabling the core components. All the core components that I talked about will be live in next 8 weeks.
Yep. So over and above that, talking about our partnerships, we've got some key partnerships in Unicus and Block Tickets and Zeed. Could you talk about the importance of having that in place prior to launching the mainnet?
Yep. So every blockchain needs to grow by building community and blending partners. Yeah. And that's what we have done. For example, Zeed brings in the whole Web3 infrastructure management piece. So from the day of its launch, DComm provides sophisticated APIs for developers to connect with the blockchain, automated deployment of nodes and networks, so that people who want to either build applications or validators who want to stake on DComm, they can have automated infrastructure deployments. Then we have partners like Unicus. So Unicus is a Web2 to Web3 platform and doing a lot of real-world asset tokenization. So having these partners, early partners, will help us, one, test out, validate all the core components, and will also help us, build more and more components as we go down the line, as we understand. So we are building a roadmap based on the feedback that we get from the partners in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of that community, it's been something that's been very important to us to build. And our business model is, as you can see, there's renewable energy, data centers, NFTs, there's tangible and non-tangible assets, there's digital and real-world assets. And there's bits of communities that fit into all of those departments. So we've gone on and embarked on an interesting journey, and we've pre-built the community, and we've did an ambassador program which launched over the last couple of weeks and sold out in a matter of 48 hours, and inviting people to become validators on our testnet. So you can talk about the importance of having a decentralized testnet prior to even mainnet launch, and what faith is shown in the community to participate with us.
Yeah, so one, I think very interesting is the ambassador program that we have launched. So the whole concept of ambassador program is to onboard the validators early on the testnet itself. And the best part is that we closed the ambassador program of 30 people within 1 week of its launch. It was highly oversubscribed. So now we have 30 ambassadors and almost 80 plus validators who have started validating in the next 1 week, start validating the testnet itself. So the whole idea is to create a decentralized blockchain from day one, where we are not running the infrastructure, it's other people who are running the infrastructure. And then that I think is very important for any decentralized network to be. We don't want the network to be centralized so that most of the nodes are being run in-house or being run by few parties only. So we want all the nodes, and the idea is by mainnet, we need to onboard almost 200 to 300 validators who will be securing the chain. Because the whole concept that is that there's a main chain and then there are subnets. So till the time we are securing the main chain itself by having more and more validators in place, we will not be providing the security to the subnets. So to justify the decentralized nature of this blockchain, we want to have more and more validators participate on the blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I were speaking a little bit yesterday, and you gave some examples around other blockchains in existence where perhaps decentralization isn't at the core of what they're doing. Could you walk us through that a little bit?
Yep, and I think it's a public information. Quite a few blockchains, either there's a high concentration of staking nodes. So the staking nodes belong to one or two parties, whether it be Ethereum, and people are trying to solve this, whether it be Binance, where bulk of the nodes are hosted inside. So and we have seen the Ronin network, where the whole hack happened because of this, because most of the keys securing the blockchain were residing with just one party. So the idea is to decentralize the network and let the community run the network.
Yeah.
So we just want to be the enablers of the technology, but we want the validators to be as diverse as possible. Belonging to different geographies, each individual, hosting maximum a node or two. That's it, and have a diverse ecosystem. So the idea is that one, we are supporting millions of nodes on the validation side. So there's no limit on how many validator nodes can be there. And as I mentioned, 200 to 300 nodes in next 2 months before we do the mainnet launch, and then eventually, going up to 2,000 to 3,000 nodes in next 1 year.
And then talk us through a little bit in terms of that decentralization and the scalability of that nodes. What does it mean for throughput, and particularly in complexity of transactions when we're doing the asset tokenization?
Yep. So the main is decentralization and security.
Yes.
So when you have different validators, different diverse validators, then of course there are no chances of having a 51% attack. Then you can be secured that people won't be collude and then take a decision on the chain, because we want to bring in and one of the partners who is building carbon credit tokenization, they are building a subnet on DComm.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is, let's say the trend is coming in where people are launching application-specific blockchains. And when you're launching an application-specific blockchain on top of DComm, then it's very difficult for you to bring in 50 or 100 validators of your own.
Yeah.
And that's where the main chain comes into play. So there's a main chain which is, has got a huge number of validators. It's highly decentralized and secured. And there's a subnet. So main chain should provide the decentralization and security to the subnet. So we are going to enable anybody who is building application-specific blockchains or a subnet of their own. They should be secured from day one of their launch.
Yeah, it's almost a responsibility of being a platform is to ensure that that's taking place.
Exactly.
Yeah. We've come to the end of our allotted time, an extremely short amount of time to talk about such a diverse amount of information. We're at booth 92. Dr. Ravi and I will be available with our infrastructure team, and everybody's on hand to answer all the questions. I'm sure there is a lot. and we welcome you to come and talk to us there. Thank you very much for your time today. And thank you, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.